troops on the water, 32,000 troops in New York Harbor, 32,000 troops in New York Harbor. They surround our troops, they surround our troops, they surround our troops.
As a kid in the Caribbean, I wished for a war. I knew that I was poor, I knew it was the only way to rise up. If they tell my story, I am either gonna die on the battlefield in glory or rise up. I will fight for this land, but there's only one man who can give us a command so we can rise up. Understand, it's the only way to rise up, rise up. Here he comes.
Here comes the general.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Here comes the general.
the moment you've been waiting for.
Here comes the general.
The pride of Mount Vernon.
Here comes the general.
George Washington.
We are outgunned, outmanned, outnumbered, outplanned. You gotta make an all-out stand. Hey yo, I'm gonna need a right-hand man. Check it. Can I be real a second? For just a millisecond, let down my guard and tell the people how I feel a second. Now I'm the model of a modern major general, the venerated Virginian veteran whose men are all lining up to put me up on a pedestal, writing letters to relatives, embellishing my elegance and eloquence. But the elephant is in the room, the truth is in your face when you hear the British cannons go boom. Any hope of success is fleeting. How can I keep leading when the people I'm leading keep retreating? We put a stop to the bleeding as the British take Brooklyn. Night takes Rook, but look, we are outgunned, outmanned, outnumbered, outplanned. We gotta make an all-out stand. Hey yo, I'm gonna need a right-hand man. Incoming! They're battering down the battery, check the damages. We gotta stop them and rob them of their advantages. Let's take a stand with the stamina God has granted us. Hamilton won't abandon ship, yo, let's steal their cannon. Shaboom! Goes the cannon, watch the blood in this. Goes the cannon, we're abandoning Kips Bay. And there's another shipping. We just lost Southern tipping. We gotta run to Harlem quick, we can't afford another slip. Guns and horses giddy up. I decide to divvy up my forces. This skittish as the British cut the city up. This close to giving up. Facing mass scrutiny, I scream in the face of this mass mutiny. Are these the men with which I am to defend America? We ride at midnight, Manhattan in the distance. I cannot be everywhere at once, people. I'm in dire need of assistance.
Your Excellency, sir.
Who are you?
Aaron Burr, sir. Permission to state my case.
As you were.
Sir, I was a captain under General Montgomery until he caught a bullet in the neck in Quebec. And well, in summary, I think that I could be of some assistance. I admire how you keep firing on the British from a distance. I have some questions, a couple of suggestions on how to fight instead of fleeing west.
Yes?
Well,
Your Excellency, you wanted to see me. Hamilton, come in. Have you met Burr? Yes, sir. We keep meeting.
as I was saying, sir, I look forward to seeing your strategy play out.
Burr,
Sir,
close the door on your way out. Have I done something wrong, sir? On the contrary, I called you here because our odds are beyond scary. Your reputation precedes you, but I have to laugh.
Sir?
Hamilton, how come no one can get you on their staff?
Sir!
Don't get me wrong, you're a young man of great renown. I know you stole British cannons when we were still downtown. Nathaniel Greene and Henry Knox wanted to hire you.
To be their secretary, I don't think so.
Now why are you upset?
I'm not.
It's all right you want to fight, you've got a hunger. I was just like you when I was younger. Head full of fantasies of dying like a martyr.
Yes.
Dying is easy, young man. Living is harder.
Why are you telling me this?
I'm being honest. I'm working with a third of what our Congress has promised. We are a powder keg about to explode. I need someone like you to lighten the load. So, I am not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot. Hey, yo, I'm just like my country. I'm young, scrappy, and hungry.
I am not throwing away my shot.
Son, we are outgunned, outmanned.
You need all the help you can get. I have some friends. Lawrence Mulligan, Marquis de Lafayette. Okay, what else?
Outnumbered, outplanned.
We need some spies on the inside. Some king's men who might let some things slide. I'll write to Congress and tell them we need supplies. We rally the guys, master the element of surprise. I'll rise above my station, organize your information till we rise to the occasion of our new nation. So,
Here comes the general.
rise up.
Here comes the general.
comes the general. Rise up. What? Here comes the general.
What? And his right-hand man.
Boom.
All right, so in this song, it is 1976. Remember, the Hamilton musical tends to compress and move things around in time, so not everything always happens in sequential order, and we have the British Admiral taking New York City, and we have Hamilton getting his chance finally to fight for a war. He knows this is one way to rise up, and you have Hamilton, Burr, Mulligan, Lawrence, and Lafayette all discussing how this war is going to help them rise up. They're either going to die on the battlefield in glory, or they're going to rise up. Obviously, some of them are already up. I mean, Lafayette is up and Burr is up. But this is a way of either going higher and or maintaining the legacy that they have and getting higher positions within this new country that's being created. So Hamilton says, I'll fight for this land, but there's only one man who can give us a command so we can rise up. This line plays on the fact that not only is Washington the only person who can give the army a command to rise against the British, but he's also the only person who can give Hamilton and other aspiring men the command of a group of troops, which will help them rise up. Because fighting is one thing, but leading a bunch of people, that's what you really want. Because if you are an officer, if you are leading people into battle, that is already the pinnacle of rising. Go from a soldier to some sort of person in charge is the goal that Hamilton has there. So it goes on about, here comes the general. And it says here, the pride of Mount Vernon. Not really important contextually to the story, but I like it because Lin-Manuel tends to do this a lot in his musical, particularly since this was written in and for New York, Broadway. So we have this line references a familiar New York place. He mentions George Washington's Virginia estate. You know, growing up in Virginia, I obviously know that Mount Vernon is where George Washington's from. But if you grew up in New York, you might also think about money earned in Mount Vernon, a city on the border of the Bronx, which people like DMX, P. Diddy, Denzel Washington, of course, Heavy D, you should all know who Heavy D is, all got their hip-hop start from that area. So he's not only referencing Mount Vernon, where Washington's from, but he's doing a double entendre and a little shout out to some of the hip-hop greats that may have inspired him to make this a hip-hop musical. Check it. Can I be real a second for just a millisecond? Let my guard down, tell the people how I feel a second. Now I'm the model of a modern major general, the venerated Virginian veteran whose memory all... Anyway, so on. According to Lin-Manuel, the character of George Washington only raps when he's frustrated. At other times, he's more aware of his place in history and remains stately. If you didn't think my rap showed out that it was any difference between a normal talking, go back, listen to the song again. I think it's pretty interesting how he makes sure to change the way they talk to show that their difference in emotions. Washington goes on to say, any hope of success is fleeting. How can we keep bleeding when people I'm leading keep retreating? We stop the bleeding as British takes Brooklyn, night takes Rook, but look. So desertion and retreats were extremely common in the Continental Army. Remember, these are not trained soldiers, especially in these early years. It wasn't until Baron von Steuben came along after Washington already retreated to New York to offer his help and expertise in training the army that discipline rose to a standard that such problems stopped being the norm. Baron von Steuben, by the way, was a German general who, from my understanding, as far as we can tell, looks like he may have been removed from authority in the German army because he was gay. So, technically speaking, we probably would not have won the Revolutionary War without Baron von Steuben. So for those people interested in LGBTQ history, Baron von Steuben is someone that you should maybe study on, because he is someone that helped us win the Revolutionary War. So in this section of the song, you have Washington hollering out incoming to warn his crew that some artillery, some cannon shells are about to drop. But since this is the line that immediately precedes Hamilton's entrance to the song, it's also Washington inadvertently announcing that the person who will become his right-hand man is incoming. Hamilton's appearance happens right after we hear the dropping of the bomb, suggesting that his arrival into Washington's roles is itself a kind of bombshell. So again, they're battering down the battery, check the damages. A battery is not like a battery you put inside your phone or inside something like that. The battery is your barricades. It's a fancy word for barricades. There are walls or defenses. This is some wordplay because he's telling them to inspect the damage, but also to check the damage. So when you say check something, you not only mean to inspect it, but you also mean to stop it, both of which Hamilton does. And of course, that also goes into our whole constant references to chess, where you have to check someone to win the battle. So stealing cannons, that's actually a reference to something that actually happened. Hamilton, Mulligan, and about 100 other friends, I don't have 100 friends, stole 21 of the 24 cannons of the battery on Manhattan's southern tip and dragged them up to City Hall Park, a distance of just under a mile. British troops on boats just offshore fired on them the entire time. Miranda is oversimplifying the historical chronology here, though. Once again, Hamilton and Mulligan stole the British cannons in August of 75, not during the Battle of Brooklyn in 76. Hamilton and his artillery company saw battle at the tail end of the British conquest in New York City in the Battle of White Plains. But like I said, this is part of making something dramatic for entertainment, where you sometimes have to take things in history and squish, move, and merge them around, because otherwise, how are you going to fit a war that lasted 8 years into a musical that's supposed to only last 3 years? Not to mention the war is only the first half of the musical. All right, so Kips Bay is another reference here. In the early September 1776, British warships took positions on Kips Bay in New York to provide protection for a flotilla, that's like a squadron, a group of boats that brought 4,000 British soldiers to Manhattan. American forces put up very little resistance before retreating. Washington observed everything from a hilltop, then rushed on horseback into the fray, that's into the battle, in an attempt to reform the Patriot lines. At one point, he is said to have actually swatted fleeing soldiers with the flat side of his sword to encourage them to keep fighting and to not retreat. So here we have more battle history again. December 15th, 1776, British General William Howes landed 12,000 men on the lower tip of Manhattan, quickly taking control of New York City. Washington and the Continental Army withdrew up the island to Harlem Heights. During the retreat, Aaron Burr saved an entire brigade, including Alexander Hamilton, from capture. So Alexander Hamilton owes probably his life and his death, later obviously, to Aaron Burr, because most American soldiers actually didn't die fighting. Most of them died as captives of the British, because when they were captured and they were thrown inside the boats where they were kept as prisoners of war, they were not fed well, they were not taken care of. So many of them died of disease due to lack of food, nutrition, water, the pure squalor and disgustingness of their captivity. So had he been captured, odds are he probably would have died in captivity. So we have this nonstop action here in this in this part of the musical. It's all about how Washington is doing his best, but how is he supposed to lead a bunch of people who keep mutinying and keep running away? No matter how hard he tries, he's fighting the most powerful empire in the entire world with a ragtag bunch of untrained farmers who are pretending to be soldiers. Now, this is most likely a reference to the retreat after the Battle of Fort Washington in November of 1776. So we went from September, now we're in November. Seeing that Manhattan was lost, Washington took most of his forces under the cover of night in boats across the river into New Jersey. In the highs of history, this early surrender is regarded as having saved the army, allowing the war to go on, although he was heavily criticized for it at the time. And as frustrating as this sneaky retreat night was for Washington, he was able to get his own back a little more than a month later. Washington's famous Christmas crossing of the Delaware, which by this point you should have already done American Crisis, you know what that's about, is considered one of Washington's boldest moves in the war, later leading to the decisive victory of the Battle of Trenton, which you should have also read about already. So we're having multiple battles going on here in this song. And then we have Aaron Burr walking in on George Washington. Battles are over. Washington's like, what do I need? And he says, who are you? Well, on Aaron Burr, sir, Hamilton was the complete unknown, with Lawrence, Mulligan, and Lafayette greeting Hamilton with, who are you? Whereas Burr's reputation as the prodigy at Princeton College preceded him. Just a few songs later, Hamilton's already overtaken Burr as the one with the reputation, leaving Burr as the unknown. Washington has no idea who he is. So he is already losing his legacy in the sense that here is someone who should already have renown, and he's already beginning to lose it because here Washington doesn't know who he is. And Aaron Burr says, Aaron Burr, sir, permission to state my case. This exchange we're about to see highlights the difference between the ways Hamilton and Burr interact with people, and this line shows that difference the best. It is hard to imagine Hamilton ever asking someone for permission to speak, even someone like George Washington. But of course, Aaron Burr, he hesitates to speak, and when he does, he makes sure he has permission to do it, particularly to someone who is his superior, which is hard for him to accept. Washington says, as you were, which in the military order says can mean either at ease or get back in line. Burr takes it to mean the former. Becomes apparent, though, that Washington means the latter. In other words, Burr's like, oh, as you were means I can go ahead and speak and talk. But what Washington really means is get back in line, as in leave my room. I didn't call for you, and I don't need you to be here. So Burr goes on to explain about how he appreciates what Washington has been doing. And Burr doesn't come up with new rhymes. Assistance and distance were from Washington's words from just a verse ago, literally parodying back to him. This reiterates Burr's fatal flaw of adjusting his beliefs to meet the situation at hand, rather than holding fast to his own values. And Washington immediately recognizes, he's like, you're just telling me what I already said. If I need someone to assist me, why do I need someone to already agree with me and tell me what I already know? I need someone to help push my thoughts a little further and make me be more, not just what you're doing. And as for firing from a distance, this is again typical of Burr, who never met a position he couldn't abandon. Still, this is where Burr loses his shot at Washington support. Washington may have found himself forced to engage in a distant strategy, but it wasn't what he wanted to do. And regardless, Washington has no interest in a yes man. In other words, he is all about the talk less without the smile more. You know, he wants people to be able to argue with him and debate with him and not just nod and agree with him. So Miranda is reminding us that Burr stays out of all fights, both metaphorical and literal. Then we have Washington going, huh. So this huh serves much the same purpose as Hamilton's half-offended, half-nervous ha earlier on in the musical. Washington doesn't want to antagonize Burr, but he, like Hamilton before him, wants no part of his advice. He's like, seriously, another person telling me what to do? I already get that from the Continental Congress and other people who want to take my job as commander. Go ahead. I don't know who you are, but let's hear what you got to say, even though I have no interest in actually hearing it. So Washington hesitates, was like, yes, as in, oh, geez, do I have to listen to this? And Burr starts to talk, and then boom, Hamilton interrupts Burr in a pretty good representation of the relationship. Burr has a very measured and careful way of speaking, while Hamilton will jump in and interrupt people if he thinks has something important to say. Burr wasn't asked to visit Washington. He went there on his own accord. Hamilton's arrival invitation, though, just makes one more thing that's going to make Burr jealous of Hamilton and lead to their eventual confrontation later on. So they're talking, introducing, and Washington says, Burr, and Hamilton responds, sir. And Washington says, close your door on your way out. This is Washington's nice way of don't let the door hit you on your butt on the way out. Having a literal door shut in his face could possibly be the narrative catalyst for Burr's desire to be in the room where it happens, which is a later song. His repeated questions of how does at the various points of the play almost becomes increasingly embittered and jealous after this moment. He just doesn't understand how Hamilton keeps moving ahead and rising up when he started so far ahead and Hamilton's not only going to catch him but surpass him, and he just doesn't get it. Now, in reality, Burr actually did serve on Washington's staff, but only for 10 days before being dismissed, which may actually be worse than never being given a chance. To be given a chance and then be told, yeah, you're not good enough, is probably worse to Burr than just being thought, oh, he overlooked it and didn't see how great I am, versus, oh, he did see me and he didn't care. Washington was one of the most naturally diplomatic people that ever lived. Even so, though, you can tell in this that he did not like Burr. So Burr exits. All right, so this is where basically Washington's going to be interviewing or asking Hamilton to take a job. He's going about how his reputation precedes him, but everyone that's tried to make him on their staff, they've refused to be able to get him because Hamilton wants to be out in battle, showing courage. He doesn't want to be someone manning a desk, helping someone, even though being someone's chief of staff is actually a pretty good position to have. Not to mention it's a lot safer position, but he doesn't want it. It's not being a secretary, it's something much more. All right, but he's like, look, I get it. You want to fight. I was the same way, which is true. I mean, when Washington fought in the French and Indian War, he was all about like showing how brave he was, and plenty of people killed. And he's like, look, you need to live. Dying is easy. Living is harder. We need people to do the hard work after this is over. And you're so smart and you're so capable. We can't lose you on the battlefield as just another gun. I need you to be something more than just another gun. I need more because, look, Congress isn't helping me. The colonies will not give any of the money that we need because we don't have the ability to tax them, and everything's about to fall apart, and I need someone I can trust that I can rely on. So Hamilton's like, okay, I get this. You know what? This is it. This is my chance. Working for the most powerful, important man in the country, this is exactly what I need, and I'm going to go for it. And then Washington says, son. And in the script, Washington interrupts Hamilton with the single word son, which captures his paternal feeling for his young lieutenant. In other words, there has often been compared that Washington treated Hamilton as a son. There was even rumors at some point that he was like Hamilton's real legitimate father, which obviously is not true, but that was like political attacks. But in Jackson's delivery, son also has a hip-hop resonance, implying brotherhood, and Perry Jackson's the guy that plays Washington. So calling someone son is a very common thing in hip-hop about showing how you're friends and family. It's like brother man or things of that nature. And then he goes on to say that we're going to bring in Lawrence and Mulligan and Lafayette, but this continues the adjustment of chronology from Aaron Burser. Hamilton met Lawrence and Lafayette after he joins Washington's staff. They weren't connections he brought with him. So nonetheless, it's fine. And this shows, but it does show Hamilton's rapid thought process, moving on as soon as he has a solution. This is also shown later in Nonstop. Like, okay, you want to go? All right, let's go. I mean, he probably has some sort of severe level of like ADHD or OCD. Like you give him something and he is on it, moving. And then we need some spies on the inside. Some kings almost might let things slide. So Mulligan, he used his stereotypical Irish gift for conversation and his stereotypical tolerance for alcohol to ply his redcoat customers into revealing more than they meant. So Mulligan was working at a pub. He was also hanging out at a pub on a regular basis, not working there as a tailor. And he would constantly just hang out, and then he would talk to the customers at the pub and try and get them to tell him more than they should. Oh. And then we get here, master element of surprise. I'll rise above my station, organize your information till we rise to the occasion of our new nation. The word Guy is originally derived from Guy Fawkes, an infamous British traitor. You may remember him from last year when we watched that video of V for Vendetta. Fawkes and his co-conspirators were Catholics, who in England were a minority suppressed by King James, and the conspirators planned to blow up Parliament during the opening of the House of Lords, hoping that James would be killed and his replacement would be more tolerant. All right, and then we pretty much finish off here with basically everyone saying, okay, here comes the general. He's now complete because he has his right-hand man. Boom, this stuff's about to explode. Things are about to really happen now because now Hamilton and Washington are joined together, and this is going to make a huge difference.
Valley Forge, winter 1778. Thomas Paine. These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands by it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. I am seeing the best minds of my generation waste away in pestilence and starvation. Is this all a test, or have we met our doom? Have we set up camp or parameters for our tomb? I have never seen His Excellency so despondent, so I've taken over writing all his correspondence. I have written Congress and received dishonest responses. I am beyond comprehension of their nonsense. They say saddle up, attack the British forces. I shoot back, we have resorted to eating our horses. Local merchants deny us equipment, assistance. They only take British money, so sing a song of sixpence. 16 tents full of dysentery, death, dying breaths, and dilettantes and deserters in the distance. Congress, I beg of you, justify your existence. All you men are just a bunch of indigenous infants. Unite these states, give them stakes in our resistance. Do you have no influence at all? Hamilton, tone it down. But sir, Alex, listen, there's only one way for us to win this. Provoke outrage, outright. Don't engage, strike by night. Remain relentless till their troops take flight. Make it impossible to justify the cost of the fight. Outrun, outlast, outlast. Hit 'em quick, get out fast. Stay alive until this horror show is past. We're gonna fly a lot of flags half-mast. Yeah.
All right, so those of you that are familiar with the musical have recognized that Valley Forge song is very similar to the Stay Alive song that's going to come later on in the musical. So this is a demo track that never made it into the musical, but since it correlates to what we've talked about with Thomas Paine, as well as what we're going to be doing with Valley Forge, I figured I would throw it in there. So hopefully by this point you recognize from American Crisis these phrases from Thomas Paine. So on December 23rd, 1776, Washington commanded that Paine's words be read aloud to his starving and frostbitten soldiers, but it would convince him to maintain faith and commitment to the cause of the American Revolution. And it worked. Just 3 days later, on the morning of Christmas Eve, the Continental Army would achieve a decisive victory in the Battle of Trenton, crossing the Delaware River in a surprise attack on the hungover mercenary Hessians garrisoned there and capturing them. He says, I'm seeing the best minds of our generation waste away in pestilence and starvation. Have we set a camp of parameters for our own tomb? When the Continental Army arrived in Valley Forge, they numbered about 11,000 strong. Throughout that winter, they lost over 2,000 to exposure, such as diseases as influenza and dysentery. Combined with the miserable conditions, this winter marked one of the lowest points in the Revolution. Although, to be fair, I think it was like 2 winters later that was actually worse than Valley Forge. This one is just more famous because of how it came right before the Great Battle of Trenton, but they actually had winters that were actually more horrible for the Continental Army than Valley Forge. So they only take British money, so sing a song of sixpence. So of the 12,000 soldiers who had encamped at the Valley Forge, as I said, 2,500 did not leave it alive. The Continental Army also lost like 700 horses to the brutal winter. And the 60-10 phrase, on the other hand, does not appear to be accurate from my understanding. Valley Forge was selected not only for its defensibility, but also for its proximity to timber, which was used to build 2,000 huts to house the soldiers, horses, and supplies. Between 77 and 78, a period which included the harshest months of Valley Forge, British sources indicated that 1,134 men deserted the Continental Army and swore loyalty oaths and occupied Philadelphia. Patriot sources, on the other hand, claim that 3/4 of those were recent arrivals to America, which can be either read as a statement about the reliability of foreign adventurers or the prejudices of early Americans towards immigrants. So for the British, they want to, be able to claim, hey, guys, we've already had 1,100 of you or so desert and join us and swear to us. Why are you still hanging out at Valley Forge starving and freezing when you could come do this? And America's like, no, it wasn't our good soldiers, not the ones born here in America. It's the immigrants that did it. So that could be like, and it could be seen as an attack on immigrants, an early one, or just the idea that foreign adventurers that maybe came here to make money cannot be trusted, or a little bit of both. So even though Valley Forge is located in Pennsylvania, the snow was often too thin and limited to use as water. So you would think, oh, they got snow, they have water, but it was not enough. So it was freezing and there was snow, but not enough snow that you could actually use it to get the water that you need to survive. In the verse, the word indigenous is another hat tip to immigrants. These men born in the colonies aren't man enough to support their homeland, leaving the work to immigrants like Hamilton. Additionally, the word skinflint, a word that describes a person who spends as little money as possible, highlights the indecisiveness of Congress. They're refusing to supply the money that needed. They keep saying we should attack and fight, but they're not giving us any money to actually do this. Hamilton, tone it down. That comes from Washington. Washington once ordered the general orders on profanity, decreeing that swearing was a vice so mean and so low, without any temptation, that every man of sense and character detests and despises it. Washington would not be a fan of Hamilton dropping the F-bomb that I bleeped out earlier. But, sir, Alex, listen, he goes on. These lyrics are very different from the tone in Stay Alive, and Valley Forge just sounds more like they're accepting the inevitable losses, where when we get to Stay Alive later, it sounds like they're trying to say, we're going to push past this. But here it literally sounds like they're sad and that there's almost nothing that they can do. All right, that's it.